Hey everyone, this is Ellen from Astrology Journal. This is my video on the Virgo solar eclipse. It will be occurring on September 21st, 3:43 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I'm showing my face here. I used to do it all the time, but I don't like the way the crop circle looks, against the chart. And I don't have a lot of ability to move it around where I want. It moves, but it'll just snap back to there. So there are just a couple of spots where I can put it in. Anyway, but it's nice. I like to show my face every once in a while. In the video that follows, I actually edited it quite a bit. So you'll notice that. You'll notice points where I clearly have edited it. Normally when I do that, I actually end up just redoing the video, but I decided not to this time because I feel like, there are places where I said what I said that I felt like I said it the best I could say it. And so I just decided to leave it as it is. I apologize for the edits, but everything I think comes across pretty well, and it does communicate what I'm seeing in the chart and what I want, the message I really want to be giving. So with that said, we'll go on to the actual video. The main theme that I see that I'm going to be talking about is the idea of goodness, the idea that humanity is fundamentally good. And the question isn't a question of are we good or are we bad? The question is, have our developmental needs been understood and met? Do we as humanity actually know how to provide the nourishment and nurturance for each person wherever they are, especially children growing up, so that they can integrate each developmental stage? My strong belief is that when we can do that, what happens is each human and humanity as a whole naturally flourishes into its goodness. If you think about a plant, when it's given the right nourishment, it flourishes. When it's given the wrong nourishment, it wilts, it withers, and it dies sometimes. And we could, if we wanted, we could say, well, that plant that's flourishing is good, and that plant is bad. But we're failing to understand what's actually happening. What's actually happening is one plant is getting what it needs, and another plant isn't. So where I'm getting that from is these visual patterns in the chart. So there's this what looks to me like a planter, that you put plants in. It's this trapezoid shape, and then arising from that is this grand trine. So it's almost like the grand trine is the plant in the pot, and it's hooked in here, down here at Uranus. And Uranus rules Aquarius. It has to do with the individualized human, and it has to do with humanity as a whole. And it's a humanitarian at its core. It's fundamentally about human goodness in a way, you could say. And interestingly, while there isn't inherently an orientation or a direction to a grand trine because it's an equilateral triangle, because we have this planter shape here, we have a direction going up here towards Pluto in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus here in Gemini. And Gemini is the first earth sign, and Aquarius is the final, not earth sign. Gemini is the first air sign, and Aquarius is the final air sign. And so Gemini is the forming the forming human, and Aquarius is the realized human. And this is our curiosity. Is our curiosity going to be met with good or bad, with statements of good or bad, or is our curiosity going to be nurtured? Are we going to get to learn about who we are, about the goodness of who we are, or are we going to kind of spoil that field of discovery, and spoil it with ideas of good or bad? There is, interestingly, the Sabian symbol for Uranus in this chart. Here's Uranus. The Sabian symbol is Santa Claus filling stockings furtively. And what do we learn when we're kids? Well, we learn, wow, this is a cool day, but we also learn, I better be good. So the message of we're either good or bad sort of really being instilled in us from the time we're young, as opposed to the nourishment and the environment and the nutrients, the understanding of a given developmental stage and what is needed at that stage. If you're listening to this on YouTube, if you go to my Substack, I've put a kind of essentially like the crux of my message or something like that, and it just lays out what I actually, what I feel is the most important thing that I have to communicate, that I have to bring. And it's this idea of good and bad, and what's really underneath good and bad, that humans are fundamentally good. And the question is, do we understand how to raise humans, and it feels to me that culturally we've lost our way there. So that's the general theme. What I want to do right now is just back up and talk about eclipses more generally. So here we have the sun and the moon at 29 degrees Virgo, the very last degree of Virgo. The very last degree of any sign is called the anaretic degree. And it's Piscean in nature, or balsamic in nature, and therefore Piscean in nature. So it's the idea of the end of something and the culmination of something. And it can express in some very big way, and whether positive or negative. And the idea of that is that it is expressing in that way so that it can be seen. And if it's positive, it might be something we're gifting or some gift we're getting because we've gone through the sign and we've really done the work of the sign. And so this is like the culmination point of that. If you think about something like Saturn return, the first Saturn return, people usually talk about it as a really negative experience, but what it really is a culmination point. Have we understood who we are and developed ourselves to the point? And then what happens at the Saturn return is that might be a challenging period, but it's really about an initiation almost into our path in the world. But if we haven't, been able to establish ourselves as who we are and what we really want, it can be experienced as a more, challenging in a negative way experience. And that says a lot about us as humanity in terms of how we're raising our children. Are we raising them such that they get to know themselves so that when they reach the Saturn return, this is another topic, but are they, on their path, and is that just another challenge point that allows them to actually, really groove their path in the world? So anyway, sorry, I got a little off track there. It is relevant in a way, though, because Saturn is relevant in this chart. It's retrograde in Pisces. It's releasing old patterns. And it started out its retrograde journey in Aries, so some of those old patterns have to do with identity that perhaps weren't right for it. So anyway, so the sun and the moon is at 29 degrees of Virgo. An eclipse is characterized by being in the proximity of the nodes. So the sun and the moon here is in proximity to the south node. It can be NASA. When I looked on NASA, it said anywhere up to 18 degrees. If it's within an 18 degree ballpark, it's considered an eclipse. For astrologers, most astrologers, I think, would say 18 degrees is too far for a conjunction. And most would probably say for a conjunction 10 degrees. This is 11 degrees apart, but it's still an eclipse. And it's a solar eclipse, and it is conjunct the south node of the chart, a south node of the moon. There can be eclipses that are conjunct the north node of the moon, but in this case, it's conjunct the south node of the moon. The south node has to do with our past, you can say, our karmic past, you could say. And so it's about, in the case of Virgo, we can say it's about our past, how do I want to say this? I don't want to use the word habit or pattern, which is what I want to, that's kind of where I'm heading, but that's actually Capricorn. These are the daily activities, the daily routines that we do that establish the patterns and the habits. So what we do, I've really come to appreciate deeply, Virgo, what we do day after day after day is what creates our habits and patterns. Virgo is the second earth sign, and Capricorn is the third earth sign, the final earth sign. So what we do in Virgo is the foundation for what we experience here. So our habits and patterns are at the the foundation of it is in our daily habits and our daily practices. And the foundation of our daily practices in terms of the earth triplicity is Taurus, our gifts and our talents, our sense of worth, our values. It's the ability to establish ourselves and build a solid base for ourselves. So if we don't now, and then the foundation for Taurus is Aries, right? If we don't know who we are, how can we establish a good foundation for ourselves? If we do know who we are, we can start to do that. If we don't know what our gifts and our talents are, how do we know what practices to engage in? And if we think about Virgo engaging in learning the scales, for example, learning our gifts and talents, in a sense, while I've never heard anyone talk about Virgo in this way, to me it speaks to this idea of absorption into our practices. And if we don't know what our gifts and talents are, if we don't know who we are, and we're engaging in practices that maybe feel more like a burden or a chore or something we have to do because you're supposed to do it, it might be harder to enter into that absorption period, where we really learn something, where we really enter into something as a kind of a path. So that's something to think about. So what we do day after day after day is really, really important. It's what creates our karma. And the south node, the nodes of the moon, this is the south node of the moon, this is the north node of the moon. The nodes of the moon are considered karmic points in evolutionary astrology and probably modern astrology generally. And so that has something to do with our daily practices. It's really interesting. I've talked about this before. The nodes generally travel backwards through the signs. So in other words, they travel clockwise in the chart. And the clockwise direction in the chart is the daily direction of the sun and the stars and all that kind of stuff. This is a 24-hour day. And so the south node, the nodes traveling clockwise in the chart as a general pattern suggests that, again, that our karma is related. The karma we experience, the karma that we're living is the result of what we do day after day after day, or is created by what we do day after day after day. And then the other direction of the chart, the counterclockwise direction of the chart, the direction that's in the order of the signs instead of the opposite order of the signs, it's going forward through the signs instead of backwards through the signs, that's the yearly path. And so when astrologers, when we read charts, we're usually looking at like the planets and the relationships between the planets and all that kind of stuff. What we're often really looking at, because the planets go forward through the signs, they move counterclockwise through the signs, unless they happen to be going retrograde, in which case we can think differently about it. But what we're looking at is the results of karma. We're looking at the karma. We're looking at the results of what we've been doing day after day after day. And so Virgo is a really huge sign. And the South Node speaks to our past, the past daily practices that have led us to where we are now, that have established the foundation that we have to work with in our lives right now. And those foundations are either really solid or really faulty or somewhere in between. And so the opportunity in the eclipse is really, in this eclipse season, so the lunar eclipse was also, the sun was in Virgo at 15 degrees Virgo, the moon was in Pisces, but Virgo was involved. And then the new moon before that was at 0 degrees of Virgo. So Virgo is seriously, on the radar right now. And the fact that the last new moon occurred at 0 degrees of Virgo and this one is at 29 degrees of Virgo, it's saying really this is the sign, this is the work, and it has to do with something with our past. So it's saying that what's up right now has something to do with our daily practices and our health also, by the way. Virgo has to do with our health, our physical and mental health. It's ruled by Mercury, which is up here at Libra, conjunct the solar eclipse in Virgo. So rebalancing. There's an opportunity for rebalancing things, to bringing ourselves back into alignment in terms of our practices and in terms of our health. Opposite of this new moon or this solar eclipse is Saturn and also Neptune. So Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Aries. Saturn and Neptune are both retrograde. Saturn started its retrograde cycle in Aries and is now in Pisces. It will finish up and it will go forward again into Aries. So ultimately, it's this retrograde period of Saturn and Neptune are about Aries. And the move back into Pisces is about, okay, what do we need to release? We've got a sense of Aries, the identity piece. What old patterns, what old illusions and delusions or old visions that were out of alignment with ourselves, what needs to be released? It's time for those to be released. Those, and it's not even anything I think you have to do, it's just sort of happening. So there's also a yod pattern in this chart that is pointing to Mars. So it involves Uranus again. So this triangle, this grand trine, is hooked into this. We can think of the grand trine as the flower or the plant in this pot. It's hooked into Uranus. It's hooked into the planter, and it's hooked into this this yod pattern too. And it's the yod is Saturn and Uranus on the ends, and we could say Neptune is in there too, and then Mars at the point. So the yod is the finger of God. It's pointing to Mars. Mars is also at 29 degrees, the anaretic degree of Libra in this case. So again, this kind of idea of releasing, and Libra is about balance and imbalance, our relationship with others. But I think here it's more about this idea of balance and imbalance. So one of the things that can happen in Libra is we lose connection with ourselves, and we over-identify or over-orient to the other person, codependency essentially. And Mars, ruler of Aries, has to do with this. It has to do with I am. So it's our relationship. It's our sense of identity. So we don't want to lose our relationship and identity. So the finger of God pointing to Mars in Libra is, to me, reminding us that it's always about being us. And then from being grounded in us, we enter into relationships with others. We don't cede who we are to the other. We remain who we are. And then when we get through that, so we could say that's a process that happens through Libra. Perhaps we have to, that's part of what we have to learn. And now, with Mars at the end point, it's perhaps showing us some final tweaks that might be helpful to work out in regard to this. The opportunity is to see it for what it is and enter into the work of rebalancing, enter into the work of discerning who one is and discovering who one is and bringing that back into right relationship so that oneself is fully in the relationship, not ceding oneself to the other. So Mars then will enter into Scorpio, and that's this idea of choice. The more we know who we are, the better choices we can make. The better choices we make, the better commitments we can make. So you can think about it like that. So who we are, Aries, the first step on the path is really, really important. Identity, knowing who we are. And then adjustments can be made in terms of Uranus in Gemini and in terms of Saturn in Pisces. So Saturn in Pisces would have to do with the idea of as we release old patterns that aren't us, we can bring our sense of identity back into better balance with regard to the other. And as we bring our balance back into our identity back into better balance, we have more clarity about who we are, and so our relationships are more balanced. We can then, perhaps old patterns more can be released, and adjustments can be made in terms of our routines and our patterns and our habits and that sort of thing. And then in terms of Uranus, so in evolutionary astrology, they talk about Gemini is about perspective. And in evolutionary astrology, one of the things they say is that one of the things that can go wrong in Gemini is you take in so much information that instead of gaining perspective, you lose perspective. And I like to think of it as it then just topples right over. But if we know who we are, here's how I see the path. If we know who we are, Aries, our identity, and then we're able to establish who we are and recognize what we like and what we dislike, what our talents are, what they aren't, which of those talents we like and which don't, which ones do we want to ground and foster and grow. If we are able to do these two things, then we come into Gemini, and our perspective, we're curious about things, but we're not curious about every single rabbit hole. We can focus our attention, our energy onto the things that are relevant to us. So I think part of what happens in Gemini is if Aries and Taurus, the work in either or both of these hasn't been done enough, then we can get caught up in Gemini, and the curiosity can just go crazy wild like a weed, looking at every different direction, following everybody else's idea about what matters. And then we just end up overloaded with too much information. So that's how I think that potentially happens. So anyway, I don't know if this happened for you, but for me, the screen just went a little tiny bit gray, but you should be able to see it fine. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and stop. So thank you so much for listening. Please, if you're listening to this on YouTube, thank you. If you appreciated it, like it. If you would like to subscribe, please feel free to do so. I recommend people go over to my Substack and subscribe there. That's really my primary home. It's Substack. The name of it is Astrology Journal. You can subscribe there. You can subscribe at a free or a paid level. I will not always, but often will add extra notes in the show notes. Sometimes an extra article, kind of fleshing out something I either only glossed over or that I want or forgot to talk about, and so I use it for that. I also have another Substack called Astrology Commons. That's where I write articles on different aspects of astrology, kind of innovative ideas that come through, but also together with more of a foundation, like starting with the foundation and then building on that in terms of innovative ideas that come through. And I also give occasional updates on an astrology program that I'm very slowly writing. I have to take, breaks, so I do it here and there when I'm able to. But if you're interested in that, you can sign up there. You can find it on Astrology Journal. You just go to the About page and then go down to my bio at the end. And if you click on that, it will also show Astrology Commons there. So I think that's everything for now. Thank you for listening. Always remember, take what works and leave the rest. Anything that is helpful for you in positive ways, that's wonderful. If it's not helpful for you, then it is not the right thing for you, and that's fine. Just let it go. But again, thank you so much for listening, and I will leave it there. Okay, take care. Bye.